بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. The past couple of days we have been discussing the articles of faith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained to us that we must believe in, the 7 articles of faith. We have discussed the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the proofs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence. And then yesterday we spoke about the angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the next thing actually is the books, right? Amantu billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi, the books of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Quran, the Torah, the Injil. What I wanted to do is actually sidetrack a little bit. Although this is not mentioned explicitly as one of the articles of faith, yet this is something that is undoubtedly mentioned many times in the Quran and many times in the ahadith regarding a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that just like the angels, we cannot see them in their true form. Likewise, this creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we cannot see in their true form as well. And that is the Jinn. The Jinn are a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we cannot see in their true form. Now, there's a lot of superstition that people have regarding the Jinn and a lot of misinformation that people have regarding the Jinn. And inshallah, what I will do is I'll speak about them, exactly how the Quran and the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how they explain the Jinn to be, inshallah, and to clear some of those superstitions and some of the misinformation regarding them. The first thing that we obviously know is that they are hidden, right? Jinn, the word jinn comes from the Arabic word janna yajunnu, which is a verb that means to cover or to conceal, right? So they are covered, they are concealed from our vision. We cannot see them. There are other words that are also derived from this verb as well. For example, janan, which is the heart, right? The heart you cannot see. It's inside a person's chest. You can't see the heart. Likewise, a janeen, which is derived from the same word. You can see the letters jim, noon. This is an embryo or a fetus, right? The embryo or the fetus is inside a mother's womb. You can't see the embryo. You can't see the fetus. Likewise, junun, majnun. These are famous words that are also in Urdu as well, which means madness or insanity, someone that's crazy. Why? What is the correlation between janna yajunnu and majnun or junun? It is that the intellect is concealed. The intellect is covered, right? So a person who is insane, it is as if their intellect is covered and they can no longer think properly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this explicitly in the Quran that we cannot see the jinn, but they can see us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ هُوَ وَقَبِيلُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُمْ. That indeed him, meaning shaitan, this he is referring to shaitan, he and his soldiers, they watch you from where you cannot see them, right? So shaitan and his soldiers, his group of, meaning the jinn in general, they see you from where you cannot see them. Now, we know that the most famous jinn, of course, is Iblis, shaitan. Iblis is his real name. So we know that Iblis, shaitan, he is the most famous of the jinn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran explicitly that he is a jinn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kana min al jinn, that he was from the jinn. He is a jinn. So in this verse, Allah ta'ala is mentioning how shaitan and the other jinns, they can see us, although we cannot see them. Another thing is that the jinn were created before man. This is also explicitly mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ مِنْ حَمَإٍ مَسْنُونٍ وَالْجَانَّ خَلَقْنَاهُ مِنْ قَبْلُ مِنْ نَارِ السَّمُومِ. So Allah ta'ala says, the translation of which is, and we did certainly create man out of clay from an altered black mud. So human beings are created from mud, from dirt. As for jinn, we created them earlier from smokeless fire, right? Allah Ta'ala says, min qabl, we created them earlier. So their creation was before the creation of human beings. And of course, we know this also from the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after creating Adam alayhi salam, he commanded the angels and Iblis, who, because of his high status, was very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he was included among the angels. He wasn't an angel himself, but because of his high status, he was in the vicinity, he was basically included among the angels. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded them all to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam, Shaitan was the only one, Iblis was the only one to refuse. And so this is a clear proof that the jinn, the shayateen, they obviously existed before human beings. This is mentioned explicitly in the Quran. And the fact that they inhabited this world, right? So one may think that, okay, the jinns existed, but they just, existed in the universe, not necessarily in our earth. But this was, they did. The jinn inhabited our earth as well. And this is implied from the verse in the Quran in which the angels ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed them that he is going to create a human being, that he is going to create a khalifa on this earth, the angels, they asked him that, are you going to create someone who will cause mischief and will shed blood? And the reason why the angels were asking this is because they knew that the jinn, they already did this. The jinn, they existed and they would fight. There's a narration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is mentioned in the ahadith how the jinn, they used to fight before the creation of Adam alayhi salam, and the angels basically had to stop that fight, that civil war. So they used to inhabit this earth. So that's why the angels, when they heard that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them that he's going to create a human being, they didn't question Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of arrogance or out of stubbornness. Rather, they were simply questioning Allah that we worship you, we glorify you. This new creation is just going to cause corruption, because they had the example already set forth from the jinn. Now, what is the original form of the jinn? What is the original shape of jinns? Scholars have debated this classically. You find many interpretations or many opinions regarding the original shape of jinn. So you have some people who say that they're very, very large in their true form. You have some scholars who say they're very, very small in their true form. And Allahu A'lam, but it seems, and many, many scholars are of this opinion, and I myself am as well, that they do not have any one true shape or form. Rather, the jinn they're made out of fire, as was mentioned in the verse previously. So it's as if, they're a form of energy. And energy does not necessarily have a specific shape or form. So they're a form of energy. They don't have one true shape or one true form, although they can take the shape of whatever or whoever they wish to take the shape of, except for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is mentioned explicitly in a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he states that if you see someone in your dream, then you have truly seen that shaitan, if you see me in your dream, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that if you see me in your dream, then that is truly me, because shaitan cannot take my shape. So shaitan cannot take the shape of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he can take the shape of anyone else. Similarly, the jinn can do so as well. And we learn this from other ahadith in the tafsir of the ayah, حَتَّى تَرَاءَتِ الْفِئَتَانِ نَكَصَ عَلَىٰ عَقِبَيْهِ. What shaitan, he took the form of one of the Sahaba and created some mischief, some problems in the Battle of Badr. We also find this in the famous story of Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu, that I will mention a little bit later, inshallah. But shaitan can take, and the jinns can take the shape of something that we can actually see. Another interesting thing about the jinns is that they marry and they have children. If you recall from the lecture on angels that I did yesterday, the angels, they do not marry, they do not have children, they are not classified as male or female. But the jinns, they do. They marry, they have children. And this is mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَتَتَّخِذُونَهُ وَذُرِّيَّتَهُ أَوْلِيَاءَ مِن دُونِي وَهُمْ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then will you take him, meaning shaitan, and his descendants, وَذُرِّيَّتَهُ, So his offspring. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning that shaitan has offspring. The jinns, they have offspring. Are you going to take them as allies, as friends, as guardians other than me, while they are enemies to you? Right? So the jinn, they are good jinn and they are bad jinn. The bad jinn are what are referred to as shayateen, and they are the followers of Iblis. They eat and they drink. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that when any of you eats, let him eat with his right hand. And when he drinks, let him drink with his right hand. Because the shaitan eats with his left hand and drinks with his left hand. So shaitan eats and drinks with his left hand. But the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us that we should eat and we should drink from our right hand. And also, we should say Bismillah whenever we eat and we drink, because this is mentioned in a hadith, the second hadith that I have here on the PowerPoint, that if he does not mention the name of Allah, meaning when a person, this is part of a longer hadith, the hadith states that when a person comes home and he says Bismillah, then what happens is that shaitan tells the other jinns that you do not have a place to stay. But if this person doesn't say Bismillah when entering the home, then shaitan calls his friends, tells the other jinns that you have a place to stay tonight. And further along in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, if he does not mention the name of Allah at the time of eating, shaitan says, you have found a place to spend the night, right? Because the person, when he doesn't say Bismillah when entering into the home, shaitan's telling everyone that all of the other shayateen that you have a place to stay. And also if the person doesn't say Bismillah when eating his food, you also have food to eat, right? So that's why it's important that when we enter into the home, we say Bismillah so that the jinn, the shayateen do not enter the home. And also when we eat, we don't say, when we eat, we should say Bismillah so that the jinn and the shayateen do not partake, the evil jinn and the shayateen do not partake from our food. Now, as a last point, I want to cover a point that, unfortunately, a lot of people, because of some misunderstandings that they have regarding the jinn, they're scared of the jinn, right? So should we be scared of the jinn? The answer to that is obviously absolutely not, right? Because we must realize that the jinn have no power to harm us. It is only through the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they may do so. It is only if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives anyone the ability to harm someone that they will be able to harm someone. And that's not just the reality when it comes to jinn, but anything, right? We're living in the day and age of the coronavirus, of course. We must realize that we should not be scared of anything, although it is part of deen to take precautions, right? So we fear Allah, and we know that Allah is the one that can cause harm or benefit. It is only Allah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us to take precaution, right? So we shouldn't fear these other things, but we should take precaution as part of tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Part of knowing that Allah is the only one that can cause you harm. The coronavirus can't cause you harm if Allah ta'ala does not choose to. Any disease cannot cause you harm. Any jinn cannot cause you harm. Any thief cannot cause you harm. Nothing can cause you harm if it's not for the power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives that thing. However, we are taught to take precaution. We are taught, it is definitely part of deen to take precaution from diseases, from viruses, from sicknesses and illnesses, from thieves, and of course from the jinn as well. And we find this from the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ that I'll mention as part of the last point. But before I do so, I want to mention the second point, that as mentioned earlier, many scholars believe they do not have a true form. Therefore, when the jinn appears, when you may hear a story that someone says, oh, I saw something very scary. I saw a scary figure, and it was a jinn. Perhaps it truly was a jinn. But as I mentioned earlier, they don't have any specific true form or shape. So whatever form or shape they're coming in, if it's a scary form or a scary shape, they're only doing that to scare you. So when you realize that, when you know that the jinn, they're only trying, like the evil jinn, they're only trying to scare me, then in reality, you should not be scared, right? It's just the example that some scholars give is like a person, if you know that there's a person who has a bunch of masks and they're just putting on masks to scare you, you'll just think that this person is foolish, right? I know who you truly are. You're just putting on this thing to scare me. In the same way, jinns, when they're coming in a scary form or a scary shape, they're only doing that to cause fear. So they cannot harm you if it's not for the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us many ways that we can protect ourselves from the jinn and the shayateen. And this is part of the precaution that I was mentioning earlier that we are supposed to take in all aspects of life. A part of tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to make sure that we are protected first, and then we leave everything in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We find that Ayatul Kursi is one of the strongest methods of protecting a person from the shayateen. And this is mentioned by Shaitan himself as part of the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, in which he was tasked the responsibility by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to guard the wealth that was given during the month of Ramadan. Back in the days, at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, obviously they did not have banks and they did not have institutions where they can keep all of their wealth. So the money that was donated for the Muslims was kept in the masjid. So Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, it was his responsibility to watch this money. And every night there was a thief that was coming. It's a long hadith. I'll just try to keep it brief. That there was a thief that was coming and taking some or trying to take some wealth. And Abu Hurairah would catch him every night. And the thief would say, okay, let me go. I won't come back the next night. But he kept coming back. And after 3 days, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said that, you know what, this is enough. I keep letting you go, but you keep coming back. Now I'm going to take you to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's no more excuse that you have. So this person, he said, okay, listen. I am actually Shaitan, and I will tell you a way, a method through which if you recite this thing, then you will have protection from me the entire night. And he said that if you recite Ayatul Kursi, then I will not affect you, I will not come close to you the entire night. So he let him go. In the morning, he informed the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ said that he is a liar, but he spoke the truth here, right? So Shaitan, he's a liar, right? So we shouldn't trust him in general. We don't trust Shaitan because, this hadith does not mean that Shaitan is trustworthy, but we believe in this hadith because the Prophet ﷺ verified that Shaitan was actually telling the truth. So Shaitan told the truth here, that if you recite Ayatul Kursi, then you will be protected from him the entire night. Also, the Mu'awwadatain, Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, the Prophet ﷺ will recite this frequently. Qul huwallahu ahad, Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas. These 3 surahs, Ikhlas, Falaq, and Nas, one should recite these 3 times and then blow on their hands. So spit without actually any spit coming out, so two like that, just blowing on their hands, and then blow over your body and blow over your children as well. One should do this before they go to sleep, and inshallah the jinn and the shayateen will not harm them. Likewise, the last 2 ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah, Amana Rasulu, until the end, this is also very powerful in protecting one from the jinn and the shayateen. So in summary, I wanted to mention the jinn here because they are also a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we cannot see, although we know without a doubt that they do exist, because this is mentioned many times in the Quran and in the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and just through experience. Many people may have dealt with jinns in their lifetime. And also, we should not be scared of the jinn, right? We don't fear the jinn. Whatever they do is only through the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah, in the next lecture, I will continue with the articles of faith, in which we will discuss the books of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.